This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
You need to evangelize your function and your team. It's easy to give up, give in, and let whatever keep happening, and then whatever you get, you try to optimize. That's not the way to go about it. You need to have the courage to stand up and fight.
I feel if we're going to properly give this podcast episode a title, it has to be The Accidental Marketer. Because from what I've learned, Raja, we all have an idea how life is going to go, and then life happens. And if I'm correct, I think you thought you were going down this chemical engineering path, and that makes you a one of one, because I don't know a lot of chemical engineers who end up playing in the marketing world. I mean, it couldn't be more on the other side of the brain. And so how does one leap from, give me the story from engineer?
I will tell you the story. It's pretty, interesting thing. So in India, which is where I studied and did my chemical engineering, and I was a valedictorian, and I got a gold medal, 2 gold medals from a university, and so on. I thought that I'll become a chemical engineer in terms of my employment and everything else. So, but I wanted to do my MBA, and I was fortunate to get into one of the most prestigious colleges in India called the Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore. So since I got into it, and I said, yeah, I'll do my MBA and then get back into the engineering side. And interestingly, between the first and the second years of the MBA, during the summer, we have to do an internship with an organization. And I got an offer from a color cosmetics company in India. It's called Lakme. So Lakme invited me, and they gave me a project on logistics because I'm a quantitative engineering student. So they said this guy will get some operations research model or how to optimize the journey cycles and so on. So I started off with that. And my supervisor at the time was also managing sales and marketing for that region in India, in Bangalore. And I was sitting just outside his cubicle with a table, with a desk and a chair. And there was no sound barrier, so I could hear everything that was happening in his office or in his cubicle actually. And then he was having a conversation with the advertising agency folks. And he was trying to solve for a problem, which is in India in those days, conservative women would not wear color cosmetics because that is seen as that the woman is trying to attract attention to herself. And a good lady will not do that. So it was significant judgment in that particular kind of context. And a lot of women, though they might want to use color cosmetics, they were never consuming color cosmetics. So these guys were breaking their heads. And then they were trying to say, and the campaign that they came up with read something like this. If color be to beauty, what music is to mood, play on. Now, I sat outside there, scratching my head. What exactly is this advertising telling me? And so why are they overcomplicating? So I just took a piece of paper and I wrote there, is it bad to look good? As the headline. And then I took some cuttings from some magazines and I put it there, wrote some couple of lines. And I said, hey, I went to his cubicle and said, hey, what do you think about it? He loved it. And also that day, the chairperson of that company happened to be in Bangalore. And she came in and then she looked at it, she said, this is fantastic. Let's run with it. It was launched and it has won a lot of awards. It was the best campaign of the year. So when that happened, suddenly I said, maybe I'm actually good at this field. So I started specializing in marketing in the second year of MBA, and the bug had bitten me. And now 40 years later, wow, I'm still sticking with the same one.
So Raja, a couple things. First of all, how old do you think you were when you wrote that line?
I was 21.
So you're 21 years old. There's like good energy. And then, as a guy that studies fear, right? Like fear and courage are siblings. You really can't get to one without the other. You found yourself, like I see the other side of this, like the leader, you go and show this piece of paper. Could you imagine at that moment if that person was like, what are you doing? Were you eavesdropping on my conversation? Could you imagine like the stain, like maybe you would have become a chemical engineer. And so the more time we spar with courage, the more we've said, we believe courageous ideas are the only ones that matter, but courageous ideas die without courageous leaders. And here's a leader who looks at this piece of paper and goes, this is fantastic. They could have very much have been like, what are you doing? Listening to have you ever thought about it from like the lens of if they would have said, stay in your lane?
I would not have given up, honestly, because, when I come up with some idea and if I feel that this has got substance and it has got some insight and actionability, and I feel that this is going to resonate well with people, I would not just give up like that. If he said, Raja, this is none of your business, go and do your journey cycle, I would have probably escalated it and said, look, this is a great idea, guys. At least you should look at it, right? And I was not doing it in a threatening way at all. He's a gem of a guy. And I was only trying to be helpful. I didn't go there with an arrogance because I knew nothing about the field. So I can't even afford to be arrogant. In any case, I should not be arrogant. But even at that stage, when I walked in, it was with a sincere conviction that this is a much better route than what they were taking. And fortunately, they saw it immediately.
Well, I mean, what a great muscle to start building at 21. I mean, multiple muscles, like the ability to synthesize, but also to have the conviction to know, hey, is there something? I feel like there's something here. Have you found in your career, I'm sure this has served you well. I am interested to learn, Raja, like when you're in India, I mean, think about the journey you've been on as you're now sitting somewhere here in America. Did you know you were going to move to the US? Was that always in the cards?
So I was happy in India and I was working with Unilever, which was a great company. And they used to give me an accommodation to stay in, which was a big deal in those days for a young kid to have a company provided accommodation because I wanted to have my parents live with me. So that was a very important consideration for me. And so everything was going extremely well. But then when opportunities came along, I would sort of take some big leap, much against the advice of my well-wishers. Like, for example, just to give you an indication. So I was doing pretty good at Unilever, and I was based in Mumbai in the headquarters and having fun. And suddenly one day I got a message from one of the recruiters saying that, hey, do you want to go and start the credit cards business for Citibank in Dubai? I didn't even know what a credit card was because in those days in India, there were no usage of credit cards. I said, what the hell is a credit card anyway? And Citibank, what do I know about banking? I'm a packaged goods, hardcore marketing guy. But I was open to listen to it. And then when they talked about it, I thought it was fantastic because it was about a category creation opportunity as a marketer. For me, that was a big deal in Dubai at the time for the Middle Eastern region. Number two, there was always this glamour of living in a foreign country. In India, as growing up, you say, oh, you have gone to various countries, lived in those countries. That's a positive thing because you're broadening your perspective and so on. And third, they were offering me a ton of money because they were in a tax-free environment. And when you convert the UAE local currency to the Indian rupee, it was like 10-1. I said, that's it. These are the fantastic, and I'll go. And I like the people I worked with, and Citibank had a fantastic name. But a lot of people told me, Raja, you're being stupid. Firstly, you're doing so well. And people don't leave Unilever to go and work somewhere else because it's such a great company. And number two, you're on the high potentials list at this company, which I was. And third, in those days, only typically the blue-collar workers, so to speak, would go to the Middle East. The real competent professionals, Dubai was not the destination for them. So when that was the scenario, I said, look, it doesn't matter who goes there, who doesn't go. Does it work for me? If it works, I just go and do it. And I was there and I had a ball. I was there for nearly 7 years in Dubai. And Citibank then moved me to London. And from London, they moved me to New York. And from New York to Chicago, back to New York. And then I left Citibank after 15 years and I went into healthcare, which was again a completely new industry. And this was the time when there was a significant amount of turmoil in the healthcare industry. And I was joining a healthcare insurance company called Humana. And then finally I came back to Mastercard about 12 years back now. And I don't have any regrets at all. It's a fabulous journey and I'm very grateful for what I've been blessed with.
If you pull the Ryan Berman string, I always say courage is regret insurance. And, again, like
Beautifully said.
If you look back on it, like, what would you really, really like, hey, if I could run this whole thing back, what would I do different? And there's been times in my career where things happen to me and I'm like, negative blessing. In the moment, you can't realize it. But what's very cool to hear about your story, I mean, what an adventure you've been on. And I think when you kind of go back and run it, I don't sense a lot of fear. I feel like you like trust your intuition on many of the leaps that you've taken. But when it comes to being an author, and you've got Quantum Marketing out, and it's a book that holds. It's been out for 5 or 6 years now, but it still holds. What I think I remember is that this concept of being an author, the label of author, does live in your family, right? And so was there any fear for you knowing this little voice in the back of your head, right? Because wasn't your father an author?
My father and my grandfather. And both of them have written on English literature. So they were extremely well educated and well read in English. So both of them have written one book each. So therefore, there was a desire in my own heart, saying that I should continue the tradition and I too should write a book. And I'm not even 1% of how good they were in English. I mean, they really had, if you talked about Oliver Goldsmith, that was not my cup of tea, but marketing is. So I said, okay, let me go and write a book on marketing. And here I am. So I feel very grateful. Again, even on that book, it was fascinating. I have taken some very bold stances in the book, and that is memorialized for future, right? So you cannot say, I didn't write that. Of course, I did. I wrote it. So some of the things that I was actually confronting, where I said, look, advertising, as we know it, is dead. I said, loyalty is a myth. Purchase funnel is dead. And a lot of things that we do today in marketing is completely useless. No, these are very strong statements I was making in the form of a book. And a lot of people challenged me after writing the book. And I stood by every one of them. And thank God, they're all coming out to be true the way I have written. And this was in 2021, it got published. So it's 4 years and still holding up, thank God. And, it has become a Wall Street Journal-bestseller, which I feel very good about. It published in 12 languages. It won
Amazing.
6 international book awards, so I feel very grateful.
Well, Dad should be happy. Dad should be happy.
Yes, wherever he's watching me from, yes, he will be.
Yeah. Do you feel, again, this is like two authors walk into a bar a little bit, so forgive me, but like I had a lot of fear on my book, on writing my book, because I'd never done that before. How do you write a book? And then also, I think there's a part of me that's, once you put yourself out there, like, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's out there, right? So, but the things that I learned more about myself than I ever thought I would from writing the book. Was there any like specific lesson that you learned about yourself on the way to telling these other stories?
Yeah, I think there are 3 big lessons, I would say. So the first lesson is when I start writing about these concepts, suddenly I could really think a lot more clearly. So something which is at the back of the mind, or it was subtle, that really came to the top. And that sort of informed a lot of my strategies at Mastercard. So I could actually apply it. So I was eating my own dog food, so to speak. So this is number 1. Number 2, I had a fantastic editor. She was extremely challenging in terms of she was challenging me, saying that, hey, you have said this. Give me the proof for that. Where is the evidence? Why do you feel so? And it was a lot of revelation for me to say, look, I do have a lot of opinions, which are very strong and intuition based, but I need to counterbalance them with a lot of evidence and data and theories and publications and so on. So that was the second very big thing for me. The third thing is I also realized that I enjoy writing the book. And I cracked the code in terms of how I wrote the book. I did it in less than 3.5 weeks. And this is not using Gen AI because there was no Gen AI at the time I had written my book. And that really worked very well for me. So I would just, I had a voice transcription software on my phone, and I would wear my headset and pretend that I'm actually going to give a lecture and go on a walk. And I said, today I'm going to give a lecture on loyalty. I imagine that I'm on the stage. And as I'm walking, I'm actually giving the lecture. When I come back, the software would actually transcribe it into, it's a voice to text translation. And I come sit in front of my computer, and then in those days, it used to take about half an hour for it to transcribe. I would go have my bath, come over, and then I would just edit what I have written, and then I'm done with one chapter. So I wrote any chapters in less than 3.5 weeks. And that I know is what I will use as my method, which worked best for me. And I do have plans to write future books, though I'm not 100% clear what the topics will be.
Beautiful. One of my favorite quotes, and it's almost a shame to admit I don't know who said it, but it was, "I write so I can think what I know," and that's what this is, right? Like you have this opportunity to get crystal clear, and I do think we are navigating a clarity epidemic as leaders. There's too many choices, too many options. You're sitting in a seat specifically where your team is telling you one thing, maybe the CEO is telling you something else, the board is saying something else, the data is saying something else, your gut is telling you something else. And what happens is we make no choices, right? We're overwhelmed by the surplus, and we stay stuck in this cloudy time. And so to hear you talk about the power of clarity, which I think a great brand has clarity. It is making decisions. I'm kind of smiling over here, and I'm like, if I was Raja and I was going to write a follow-up to quantum marketing, and obviously we haven't had this chat, right? So this is in real time. I'm like, oh, I would call it quantum branding. This is just me personally. I do wonder your take on this. Like when I step back and look at our industry, I don't think advertising advertised advertising very well. I'm not sold that marketing marketed marketing. And I worry that branding didn't brand branding very well either. But that's I do believe, like what you just talked about marketing, that marketing is dead as we know it. If you were going to write a book called Quantum Branding, humor me. The audio record starts now, right? Do you believe that branding is alive and well?
Branding has a long way to go. It is not right now alive and well. The reason why I say it is, since I think early 2000s, a lot of marketing has shifted away from branding into performance marketing. You're running a campaign, measuring the ROI, and then modifying the campaign, going back with it. So you're constantly doing performance campaign versus next performance campaign and next performance campaign. As a result of which, the focus on branding has dramatically come down. Branding doesn't give you instant result that very next day. But where companies are held accountable for their quarterly results, and advertising and marketing typically come under a lot of pressure from a budget point of view. So the CFO or the CEO will look around and say, where is my money going? You got infrastructure and people, you got technology, and you got advertising. So typically marketing and advertising is one of the top 3 heads in terms of expense lines for most of the companies. And when the company is under little pressure, they want to cut back on these budgets for advertising and marketing. As a result of which, marketers are constantly trying to justify, and they are living from campaign to campaign, focusing on performance of that particular campaign. and the branding takes a complete backseat. That's most unfortunate. So it's like you're running on the treadmill gets faster and faster and faster, but you have been exactly static in the same place because the brand would have actually taken you to a different level altogether. That's not happening. So that's why I say it is not doing well. It's sort of alive, but it's not doing very well. And that in itself is an opportunity now, as I see, because it's all a sea of sameness, right? Every brand looks like every other brand, and the brand names are also not very well thought through. So in that kind of a situation, for the marketers and the companies who are smart, if they begin investing in branding, they can leapfrog everybody else without compromising or sacrificing on the performance.
I feel like, well, first of all, I'm relieved to hear you say that because I think brand is a big opportunity. And I almost wonder, like, do I need to start a brand school? Like CEOs, I don't envy your position because when you study a C-suite, it's like chief executive officer, chief financial officer, chief data officer, chief intelligence officer. And then there's like the poor CMO at the end of the kiddie table on an island trying to explain story and explain brand. And this is not to vilify the way C-suites are being built, but how do you have enough trust when you're not at the same table? It's like it's a slanted table and you're like, guys, story matters, brand matters. No question performance matters, but it can't just be at the cost of our brand. So what do you do in that position?
So I think it brings me back to the name of your podcast itself, Courageous, right? You as the CMO needs to have firstly a deep understanding. Number two, you need to have the courage to stand up and fight. You need to evangelize your function and your team. It's easy to give up, give in, and let whatever keeps happening, and then whatever you get, you try to optimize. That's not the way to go about it. Like I'll tell you, for example, when I had joined Mastercard the first time, our CFO, she and I were having a conversation, and her perception about branding was not flattering, right? She thought it was purely a waste of money. And then I just asked her, I said, hey, tell me, what watch are you wearing? Okay, it was a Cartier. So I said, okay, why not a Seiko? Seiko costs you less than $10. It is precise because it is digital. It's very precise. It has calculator in it. It has also got a contacts in it. Everything is there. Whereas you're spending thousands of dollars for the stupid Cartier. Why? Okay, I said, that's the power of branding. Less product functionality, but there is something else, the halo that creates the desirability of the product. I think you have to stand up. You have to educate without sounding like you're teaching them. You have to educate. You have to educate the C-suite, starting with your CEO. Now, I was very fortunate at Mastercard when I joined. My ex-boss at Citibank for 15 years, he became my boss at Mastercard. He was the one who actually hired me to Mastercard. He is from the marketing stream. And so both of us would speak the same language. But even after he left and I had my next CEO come in, we have a terrific equation. And he understands, and he's not a marketing person, but he is an open mind. And I spend time and effort to sort of, tell him, showcase to him, give him the evidence that this works, not because I'm saying it works, but here is what the logic behind is, here is the data behind it, and so on. Most important for a CMO is to be able to talk the language of the business people. And I managed for half of my career, P&Ls and businesses. I was managing marketing only for half of my career. So during the days I was managing P&Ls, I would ask the CMO or the marketing person, hey, I'm giving you $25 million. What have you given back to the company? What value have you created? The answers are extremely fluffy because most of the CMOs, they are trained in a classical way of marketing, which is all right-brained creative thinking. They can talk about psychology, sociology, anthropology, and brand positioning, design, aesthetics. But when it comes to numbers, they struggle. And they say, oh, my brand awareness has gone up so much. My net promoter score has gone up so much. I say, who cares? What has it done to my top line and bottom line? Tell me that. So connecting the dots between marketing actions and business outcomes is very critical. Now you need to articulate all this very, very courageously and bravely because you have many more naysayers around you that you have to defend your budgets against, as an example. And this is, I keep interacting with a number of my peers in the industry. They all go through this. And I keep saying, you have to be the main evangelist for marketing. You should know how to market marketing.
Well, I still wonder if the title is right. And you can see people pivoting to chief growth officer. You see that title, but I still think it's almost, I don't know if is it because people are like, hey, this chief marketing officer, we know the data, like the turnovers every 18 months to 2 years. It's almost like a matador away. But I still wonder, why aren't we fighting for chief brand officer? And I also want to give you a cap tip on hey, left brain and right brain. Like, you got to go figure out not just the creative side, but the creative business side. How does this help on the business side? Is there like a program you send your people to, or like, where do you send your people when you've got someone that's like net promoter score, or they are on one side of the brain and they need to learn the business? Like, where do you send them, or how do you inspire them to learn that world?
So, what we have done is we started investing at Mastercard a number of programs to make our classical marketers more savvy on the contemporary aspects, and likewise for the contemporary marketers and performance marketers to educate them on the sciences of marketing, the fundamentals and the foundations of marketing. We do this cross-fertilization. Firstly, for example, I have professors coming from various universities and taking lectures. And these are available to all my team members that dial in. For example, there is a course from Yale School of Economics, Yale School of Management on behavioral economics, as one example, right? Behavioral economics are both qualitative and quantitative, as an example. We had a digital marketing 101. Now, today, for example, you go to many CMOs or even CDM marketers and ask them, can you tell me exactly how programmatic works? They cannot. Right? They know when to drop the word appropriately, but then there is a hesitation to get into it. And therefore, they just delegate it and abdicate it. That's not going to work. Right? And so what we are trying to do is to educate the team. So we created something called Digital Marketing 101, and we are teaching people about it. We have got Finance 101 for marketers to understand finance. So we are taking different areas, and now we have started classes on artificial intelligence. And we got one of the top industry experts who is coming and taking those lessons, or giving those lessons to my entire team. And these are recorded. So because my team is spread across all over the world, so the time zones may not work out. So but that doesn't matter, because if you're in Australia, tomorrow morning you wake up, it's available on the website where you can click the recording, you can go through it. And the individual who has given the lecture is available for Q&A thereafter. That works brilliantly. So these are some of the kinds that we are trying to do.
No, I love it. And it's kind of ironic that you're at Mastercard talking about money also. I mean, like a little bit like, let's make sure we understand the money side. Exactly. And this is a good segue into, I mean, a pretty special concept. I mean, in one word, in priceless, right? I mean, it's been around since 1997, right? So we're kind of tiptoeing up here towards 30 years. And I could see in an emotional conversation, like a frustratingly emotional conversation, about someone being like, no, people should know the word Mastercard. Not why are they saying this word over here called priceless? I mean, even though they're synonymous now, you can't not, right? You can't not think about Mastercard without hearing the word priceless. And one of the things I think has been super impressive is how sensorial you've taken the brand. I mean, it's not just something you hear now, it's something people can experience. There's been some pretty cool decisions you've made on the brand from a sensorial approach to spark all the senses. Can you share a little bit about this work you've been part of?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, when I joined Mastercard, I inherited priceless. The first thing I told myself is, don't have the new bride syndrome. So in India, the term new bride is basically when she comes to the in-laws' home, the first thing she starts telling is how great her mom's home was and how everything is going wrong here. Now I am here, let me fix everything. So they say, don't fall into the new bride syndrome. And I had to tell that to myself, number one. Number two, while Priceless at the time had fantastic recognition and it seeped into the culture of various countries around the world, it had lost a little bit of life, meaning it became very routine. It's become a little stale and almost like a wallpaper. You know, it is there, but it doesn't do anything to you anymore. So the choice was either to throw the baby out with the bathwater or to find out a way to take it to the next level. And I chose the second. So trying to firstly advance Priceless from being an advertising platform into a holistic marketing platform, which means Priceless should be there in everything that we do across all the 4 Ps of marketing, not just in advertising. Number two, in advertising, basically we would showcase priceless moments in people's lives and celebrate them. Whereas what we said is we will curate those priceless moments in your lives and then we will amplify them. And from priceless moments, it became priceless movements. And when we went through this whole transition, suddenly Priceless started regaining a lot of energy, positive connotations, so much so that today Priceless is probably the only term that I'm aware of based on the research that we have done, which drives a company's core and its soul and heart, so to speak, in an unbelievably positive fashion. And, in the past, we used to be at number 87 in the list of the world's most valuable brands. We were at 87 in the top 100. Today, we are at 11. And so that's a gigantic movement forward all the way from 87 to 11. And I hope it'll be a top 10 brand soon. That's an aspiration right now. But this is without increasing my marketing budgets. This is by reviving and re-energizing Priceless and leveraging it in the most appropriate way. It changed the game for us. Now, as a part of it, what we also did was studying a lot about psychology, human psychology. So how do people receive information in their brains? Now, those are called senses. There are 5 senses, the sense of sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. So we said, why is it that in marketing, we are not deploying all the 5 senses? So if I were to give you an immersive experience where all the 5 senses are tapped into, the impact you create on the consumer with your brand is unbelievably strong. Because if you're purely resorting to advertising, for example, the effectiveness of advertising is coming down dramatically. On an average, a consumer is bombarded by more than 5,000 ads, which they cannot process. So a lot of wastage and clutter out there. The span of attention of human beings has shrunk to under 8 seconds, which is less than that of a goldfish. Now, with all these kind of things happening, plus people are sick and tired of ads, they're putting ad blockers on their devices. There are 600 million plus users who are putting ad blockers today actively on their devices, which means you can never market to them. So what we said is advertising is not the way forward. You need to put people in immersive experiences curated by Mastercard, give you an unbelievable priceless memories, so to speak, and we amplify those memories for other people to experience secondarily. And this strategy has worked extremely well. And this is what we call as multisensorial, tapping into all the senses of a human being.
Raja, it feels like, as it should be, but easier said than done, strategy first, and then let's talk about budget allocation. Right? Is that, as you were like, hey, there's something bigger here. We have an and to be fair, I know you inherited Priceless, but do you feel like it was early in the role where you were like, hey, how do we curate these sensorial experiences?
So what we said is, at that time, my question was, okay, Priceless is gone a little dull. How do I energize Priceless? Not through more advertisements or more creative ads. So from advertising-led marketing strategy, I moved to the experiences-driven marketing strategy, which is experiential marketing. Once we got into experiential marketing, where we are curating these unbelievable experiences around the world at scale and in an economical fashion, we said, this is fantastic. As a part of that evolution we said, okay, if you have a person captive in a particular area, can we really communicate through all their 5 senses? So that's how we created fragrances that are unique to Mastercard. We created macarons. We have started restaurants. We got 7 restaurants around the world at this point in time. And then we have got the aspects of touch through cards. We call them touch cards. So we started really diving into every single sense, understand how that sense works, try to find a relevant value proposition from Mastercard that can tap into that sense and create an unbelievable impact on the consumers. And this is what multi-sensory marketing is about.
The macaroons, right? Couldn't more perfectly look like the logo, by the way. I mean, like, I'm sure that wasn't perfectly strategic, but also
it was not by accident at all.
But on the sound side, the mnemonic, right? Or I think you call it a sonic
brand.
And so people hear that sound, and it's like just another little nod to Mastercard. Very, very thoughtful. The restaurants itself, are they called priceless? The 7 restaurants?
These restaurants are all called priceless.
Okay.
It's called priceless by or priceless with.
And so as you think about like this whole experience, curated experience, when you step back and think about, I mean, you've hit all the senses at this point. So now what? Like, where do you take it to make sure it keeps its energy?
Oh, in fact, I have got a plan that will last us at least for the next 10 years. In terms of new ideas and new concepts in the pipeline. And there are more ideas than we can implement. And it's not just about the quantity, but to make sure that every single concept, if we give it enough amount of time for it to take roots and stabilize before we go to the next one. Like, for example, we started with sonic branding, which is audio brand. Before that, we did the visual brand. We call it the symbol brand, where the 2 circles are there without the name Mastercard in it. Just the 2 red and yellow circles. So that was our symbol brand. Then we went into audio brand. Then we got into haptic brand. So when you pay, for example, make a payment and your Mastercard is there in this and you have made the payment, it gives you the vibrations which map exactly to the rhythm and intensity of the sonic brand that you hear. So we are actually taking it a level after level after level, and it's having a profound multiplier effect. Each one is amplifying everything else that has happened before.
You know, we talked about a little earlier the need to have the data, right? Because like you're taking this back to leadership. I mean, this is like a case study in brand. I'm hoping Harvard is calling you to run this classic case study. But
so I must tell you on this. So Harvard Business School has already written one case study, and Yale School of Management has written a second case study. And so I've got multiple universities which have written case studies about the work that we have done.
When you go to back up to leadership, and again, we're talking about that same C-suite room that may or may not have believed in brand at first, and then they see the multiplier effect. And this might be an unfair question because, you know, you're not prepared for this, but like, is there a business data point? Like, do you have a multiplier number that you use to be like, by doing X, Y, and Z, by being fully sensorial, the impact it's had on our brand is X? Can you share like what you share?
Oh, yeah. You see, basically, there are a couple of things. Just by adding sound to a visual environment, the impact can go up as much as 20%. When you have sound and the visual, and when you add haptic to it, it takes it almost 44%. So there is a multiplier effect with each sense when you add on to it. The longest memories of the brand and the brand experience happens when they smell the scent. That deepens it. So this is done very, very scientifically and in a good way, and not in an exploitative way. It is basically to give them a very pleasant experience through all their senses. And that goodness is what makes it so memorable. And they become very strong advocates of your brand.
This has just been really cool to learn just how you've gotten from a very long way away to where you are today. Can you share, is there a stain? Is there a moment in your career where you look back and you go, you know what? I wasn't very brave here, or I played it safe here. Maybe it was just paralysis. And, who knows if it was a moment that, I'm not here to bring you down, right? But like, you're like, never again, never again. Is it, do you remember a specific moment for you?
For me, it was more the other way around, where I have taken decisions which were a little aggressive, right? And I said, this is something which is going to work very well. And then we went all in, and with, of course, appropriate testing and all that stuff. But the results were actually not as robust as we thought they were. And so it was, for me, if there are errors errors of commission than errors of omission. So I would not sort of, hold back from trying things out. And we are not like, nobody is going to be 100% right all the time. There are occasions when you fail, but I would much rather try and fail than not to try and regret later.
Yeah, I love that. And again, it's our mantra. It's not one word. We haven't gotten it down to the priceless level, but it's right over my shoulder. It's brave what's hard. And usually what we find is that there's a hard conversation that someone isn't having, or there's a hard decision that someone has to make, or maybe, there's a courageous idea. It's like they're afraid to make that hard decision to invest in. As you think about helping anyone that's looking to brave what's hard, whether in work or in life, what's the advice that you have for them?
So if I understood the question correctly, you're asking me about what advice would I have for somebody from a point of being courageous? So I think, courage, to me, one part of it is attitude, right? And you need to have respect about your own views. You need to have conviction in how you think and what you feel. And you need to do your due diligence. It's not just being foolishly brave. It's about you're being thoughtfully courageous. And what I mean by that is you do your homework. You study very well all the evidence that is there. And after careful thought process, you come to a particular conclusion. That conclusion you stick by. You should still be open to feedback, because if somebody is bringing a very different point of view that you did not consider before, bake it into it. So don't be obsessed and fanatical only with your ideas or thoughts or concepts. Be open, be flexible to change. But once you have decided, be courageous about it. Go for the implementation. Stand up for your ideas. Stand up for your people. Stand up for your work. I think that's extremely, extremely important.
Music to my ears. Sounds like a Sonic if I've ever heard one, right? So as you take the same feedback for yourself, and now this is me looking at you as the author, the researcher, right? Is there, or as a futurist, we'll say, is there a topic maybe you're not ready to have full conviction for, it's still messy, but that you're studying that we should keep our eyes on?
Yes. And that's what I know. I was very excited initially when there was a lot of momentum around what you call multiverse, not just metaverse, but multiverse. Okay, there are various kinds of alternate realities, augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, so on and so forth. As a concept, I think it's incredibly powerful. The execution of the concept to the devices and to the software was a bit clunky. But this is something I would not give up on, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Blockchains is another concept, which to me is very, very powerful. In advertising, for example, there is a lot of opacity, meaning there is not transparency, and there are a lot of middlemen. And today, as an advertiser, and if you're a publisher, I'm paying $100 to be putting my ad on your site, you receive less than $40. $60 goes to middlemen, which is height of inefficiency. So the key thing is, if you have a blockchain-based system, it'll make things so much more effective, so much more frictionless, and so much more transparent. And to me, these are the kind of concepts which are still out there. They took the birth. There was a hype. Now they're on their down, but I won't give up on. I think these are, for example, two of those areas which I'm very bullish about into the future.
We've been hanging with Rajamannar, CMO of Mastercard. You know what? I'm going to be courageous, Raja, for a minute and say, I'm really happy you didn't say AI. I'm just very happy you didn't say AI. Not that we don't. There's not a million applications of it, but you had my head nodding, thinking about multiverse. It does seem like, oh yeah, AI sort of like kind of elbowed its way in here, and we kind of forgot about all the plays that we can experience. And I don't know if it will be called a sixth sense, but I could see why you would go there. Incredibly inspired by our convo. A couple of the things that I took away also: don't give up on brand. We all have work to do to educate. We all have to still do the work to be ready for those conversations. Keep your head on a swivel. I still think power of leadership. It's very hard to have conviction and to delicately educate. I will say, when you were talking about the watch story, the amount of times I've said to somebody, hey, what did you watch at home last night? What made you like laugh? And then you got in your car and you drove to work and like the work version of you showed up. Like, no. Go back to that other person of you. Cause like that's how we all are. There is no other. It's just that person. Any last thoughts for the audience?
So I would say, when I was growing up, access to knowledge was extremely limited. Extremely limited. Today, there's too much of knowledge floating around, and most of it is free. It's a golden moment and a golden opportunity for us to learn. And I would say that given how fast technology is evolving, how fast geopolitics are changing, how fast cultural transformations are happening around the world, you have to keep yourself at the cutting edge if you want to be a top marketer. And that's very critical, not only just a top marketer, but also a top business person or a top leader. So from that perspective, learning is going to be very important. You cannot delegate learning to somebody else. You have to learn yourself, internalize it, and provide guidance and inspiration to your teams. And if somebody is coming and presenting something to you, you should at least know enough to ask the right questions and figure out when they answer whether it is fluff or it has substance. My point is, learning has to be on the agenda of every leader. And I think that it requires time, it requires commitment. At this stage in my life and in my career, I spend about 5.5 hours every weekend completely for learning.
Wow.
And that makes a huge, huge difference. And I think that's something which I would strongly advocate and advise my peers and other marketers and other business leaders say that spend time learning. This is the most unbelievable time that we are passing through.
And if you're not interested in learning, you should consider chemical engineering, folks. That is the real lesson of the episode.
I love it.
Raja, to our accidental marketer, thank goodness you fell in love with story and learning and brand. So wonderful to have you on the show, man. Looking forward to that next book too.
Thank you very, very much. And I look forward to reading your book as well. And thank you very much for having me on this show. I heard so many good things about it. It's a privilege being here. Thank you.
Stay courageous, Raja.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.